Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Agents at Work. Today, I am with Ben, creator of Polsia. Hi, Ben.
Hello, Jordi. How are you?
Doing well. I was really excited when I saw your tweet because it's something that I prognosticated that was going to happen, but a bit later. For those
Uh-huh.
who did not see the tweet, what are you building?
So Pulsia is an AI that builds and runs companies autonomously. So it's sort of like I built maybe a little early, or maybe it's just at the right time, the product that everyone has been talking about. The Sam Altman of the world, the Elons of the world, that's been predicting that AI will be able to do everything and will essentially take over most of the jobs. Pulsia is an attempt to build like an early prototype of that. And so the way Polsia works is like, user signs up, gives it an idea. And actually, you don't even have to give it an idea. You can click on surprise me and it will research you and find an idea that makes sense for you. And essentially, I give each instance of a company a web server, a database, a GitHub account, an email address, a Stripe account, a Meta Ads account, et cetera, et cetera. So I give it like essentially everything you need for a team to be able to build an online business. And after that, you essentially have an orchestration of agents that are gonna like write code, launch marketing campaigns, buy ads, response to emails, do cold outreach, do research on competitors
Hmm?
in an autonomous way. So like the user can of course guide the AI on like what they want, what they think the direction should be, but autonomously the AI will wake up at periodic, essentially today it's every day, but it could be more often, decide what's the best next step, right? So if there's a bug in production, maybe it's like, okay, let's before we do any marketing, let's fix the bug. If there's no bugs and like the onboarding flow and the analytics show that the product is working well, then maybe spend more time on cold outreach or on trying to do some ads or do stuff like that. So the idea is that like Polsia is able to run any project and essentially enable people that have ideas. And I've probably tried the Lovable, the Replits of the world and tried to tell the AI what they wanted. What's different about Polsia is that like you don't have to tell it what to do. It will do the work regardless, and it will never give up. And it will always be enthusiastic about, and it will help you with strategy. It will help you with marketing, stuff that like other tools, other no code, app builders don't do, right? They just wait for your instructions for you to tell them what you want versus Pulsia will build what it thinks makes sense if you don't give it instructions.
So, Polsia is the founding team that every entrepreneur would like to have, right? Like I have an idea, I want to start, and then usually there is a lot of tasks for me
Mm-hmm.
to materialize that idea, and then there is a lot of execution that many times one person cannot carry over, so you have a team, and in this
Mm-hmm.
case the team would be Polsia.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that like a lot of starting a company, it starts with like great instinct about a market. It starts with like understanding, what to build, product sense and taste. But after those initial phase of excitement, there's a ton of grind, right? It's like getting the product right. And then once it's right, trying to reach out to users. Or maybe actually you should just start with a landing page and buy some ads to get some intent or get some emails and talk to customers, right? And it's in that's why entrepreneurship, it's the most gratifying job, but it's also the hardest because it's really a grind to not give up and to, get back up when you get punched, which you get punched almost every day, right? And especially when no one cares, because no one cares about anything in these days, right? And so it's really hard to get attention. And so Pulsia is sort of like a new wave of platforms where the AI is aligned with you as a team and like will never give up and will be always enthusiastic as long as you give it compute dollars for it to like stay, be able to feed itself and continue working.
You mentioned that you started, like maybe you launched it a bit earlier. When did you started working on this?
So, and I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I started, I started my career coding. After that, like I had like more business positions where like I was more like a GM, like managing huge teams of like ops, engineering, product, like more of a CEO level. But when AI started, because when vibe coding started, right, pretty much like 2024. I started coding again because I was like, this is crazy. Like, I need to code again. And honestly, since beginning of 2025, I've been, coding from, 16 hours a day. seeing the evolutions of all the different models. We are getting crazier and crazier, which to me culminated with in December with Opus 4.5, which with the Chrome Cloud integration, sort of like blew my. That was to me that was the game over, right? But the long story short is that I spent the whole 2025 building a bunch of different products, but Polsia specifically culminated in like what I discovered, where I was like, as I was building with AI, I was like, okay, actually, it can do anything. So the most exciting thing to me at this point as an entrepreneur is not to build another SaaS or try to target a specific demographic or problem to solve. It's to build the platform that where I could build 1,000 companies. So that it started with this crazy idea, and I was like, you know what? Let me start at the end state, because we all know the end state is that AI can do everything. So let me build that now and see what breaks, right? So that was the concept. And so I started building it in November of last year, and pretty much like in a month it was built, because once you know how to talk to AI, it can go really, really fast. And so the V1, I launched it mid-December, and things started accelerating. In January, I already had very heavy users. Initially, people like using it, every day, talking to their sort of like AI PM, AI CEO, like daily, responding to emails. I had a lot of friends use it, which was the first time in a long time that friends were calling me for bugs. They're like, "Dude, like there's a bug," and I'm like, "Dude, okay, I'll fix it." They're like, "I'm sorry to call you." And I was like, dude, don't be sorry. I'm so happy that like you call me, because it's like usually your friends are like, yeah, I'll try your product, and then they don't even try it. They don't even try it, or they try it once and like, okay, dude, I don't care about your fucking product, right? So it's been a great learning. Of course, the first product was very raw, and like I've been making it more stable and adding a lot more features and listening to customers. And actually, I'm at the point right now where like I'm actually making Pulsia more and more autonomous itself, for two reasons. First, I'm alone. I'm a solo entrepreneur. Even though I've never been a solopreneur in my life, I've always had teams. But number one, I think it's a forcing function, because since I'm alone, I'm forced to automate every function of the Pulsia, the company, right? Which then teaches me how I can make Pulsia, the company builder, better for all the users, because I sort of like eat my own, sort of like learn from like using the product and using how. And what I've realized these days is that like I can actually make Pulsia, right now it's probably 80% autonomous, and I can probably make it 100% autonomous, meaning that like Pulsia will essentially start building itself, responding to user feedback, responding to bug reports, um, and I'm becoming a bottleneck, because actually, right now, whenever like if you're a customer, like, and you use the product and you tell Pulsia, hey, like build me, like I actually want to add a Solana wallet to like my app, right? So I'm not a crypto guy, so I haven't built that, because I'm like, I don't get crypto like that. I mean, I get crypto video games, saying like that's not my thing. But there's a lot of users that want that, and so the agent that's talking to you will be like, hey, we don't have this capability right now, but let me put a ticket in, a feature request. If there's like enough people asking for the same thing, I have another agent that is looking at that list, a PM, and that analyzes what are the features that are most asked, and then prioritizes it, and then have an engineer build it, and then a QA engineer that like runs a unit test, integration tests, and then says, should we push it to production or should we tell Ben? And so right now I configure it to be very conservative and tell Ben. And so then I look at it and I'm like, okay, is it safe to push a production? What's the worst case that could happen? Like, and I analyze, of course, it would my taste, like, does that make sense? Is there a UI, or is it just a backend thing? And the idea is like the loop is faster and faster, right? But at one point I want to get it to the point where like the whole platform is autonomous, because if I'm going to build a platform that lets people create any company, who am I to judge what they want to build? I mean, as long as it's ethical and legal, of course, right? But besides those two boundaries, who am I to judge, right? If they want to, I don't know, if they need like an integration to like, I don't know, print on demand t-shirts, I'm like, that's not the first thing I would build, but like if that's what people want to do, well, let's build the feature. And so I love the idea of Pulsia becoming fully autonomous, meaning like it would fix bugs, refactor its own code, build features that users want. So not randomly, just listen to the users that are building real companies, listen to the agents that are building stuff, and that, agents, when they build stuff for a customer, they also can request features and do bug requests, right? Which means that like even agents are like, hey, I tell them like, how could you do your job better, right? So a customer
Mhm.
asks you to like, I don't know, build like a specific thing or do a cold outreach campaign. The agent actually initially early on they were like, hey, like actually I would need like an MCP, like a hunters.io or like a database of professional emails because I'm sending emails, but I'm guessing the email addresses and they're wrong. So give me access to like a professional database that's, and so I built it because an agent told me I need that to do a cold outreach. That's not even the customer asking. And so then you sort of have a system where like agents and humans ask for features and like the most represented features and bugs get fixed right away. And you have a self-healing system. And a company like that is like, I mean, as an engineer, it's extremely exciting for me to build a system like that. And the fact that I can do it with one person is insane, right?
Yeah, it is. And actually, I think that that's one of the most impressive things that of the world that we are living today. You have been an entrepreneur before. You had successful companies. You had to manage teams of people. So you already did most of the entrepreneur thing before. So you know not only the outcome that you are looking for, but also like how the path is. However, you said like about 2 years ago, you were like, okay, this about coding thing, this is crazy. Now I can be a solo founder.
Mhm.
What are the things that change? So not only from the engineering point of view that most of the people know, like, hey, I ask now to connect to MongoDB instead of Postgres. I have never used MongoDB, but it knows how to do it correctly and avoid many of the pitfalls. But also in the business world, what did change?
I think the core change has been a couple things, right? I think the biggest changes has been first of all, like sort of like Cloud Code or like sort of and what Anthropic launched with the agent SDK, which now, Codex has the same thing, which is giving developers that agentic loop, which early 2025 was built by the Lovable and the Cursors of the world, and it was all proprietary, right? And it was like, and initially early 25, I was like, I want that, and it was not available. I had to rebuild myself, and like the models at the time were not good enough. I think when Anthropic like literally dropped in, they're like, you know what, everyone can use it, right? And actually, Cloud
Mhm.
Code is like the UI, but also you can, if any developer can use the agent SDK. I think that was a huge moment that actually at the time I was talking to a guy on Anthropic and I was like, is it, because I was like, this is the future. This is insane. Like you can build so much stuff with this. And I was like, is it working? And like, the adoption is being low, is slow so far, right? So I think that was one of the biggest unlocks, I think. The second unlock is just the models becoming so good, right? I think, like, I mean, that's an obvious one, but like, and especially like Anthropic again, pushing the boundaries of getting the models to be so good at using tools, so good at like investigating, so good at finding the resolution. It's been crazier and crazier how good out they are. And essentially, what increasingly happens is that you can one shot features, one shot bugs, one shot everything, right? Which wasn't the case in like 6 months ago at all, right? You had to like, it was a 5 shot, 10 shot situation, right? Of course, MCPs were a big thing, but essentially MCPs in the sense of like essentially the models being very good at using tools and then you like essentially Pulsia is a bunch of agents that are that are that are good at doing a certain thing and then using a bunch of tools and just give them like a ton of different tools that they can use to do things in the real world, right? I think skills has been a huge one. It was a
Mhm.
little underrated for a while, but like it's absolutely huge, and it's especially huge from a developer perspective because now it's sort of like the way I can build an agent in a way that like if you had to define like what an agent is, it's like a prompt and tools, right? It's like it has a mission and it uses tools to get to that mission. But what's really nice now is that like, and it's sort of my routine. It's like, for example, like I build a feature, right? So like I'm like, I go to open code, I'm like, hey, like let's add this improvement to whatever I'm doing. And then when it's done building it, I'm like, hey, now I want you to create a new skill called check that the improvement worked in production. So then it knows all the context of what it changed and how to test the result, right? So then it writes the whole skill and then that I can just call so simply from the CLI, right? Then I push to production, and a day later, I just call that skill, and it gives me a report about all the impact of that specific changes. And sometimes it's like, actually, I messed up, like actually, or there's a bug that I didn't find, and then it fixes it, and then like, okay, now update the skill again. So you can then update. It's sort of like you can iterate with the agent on like what you want it to output, and at the end of every loop, say just save it to your skill, right?
Yeah.
Which essentially is sort of like if you hired an employee and you were like, do this thing, and then you see it mess up or not doing it. By the way, not mess up, not do exactly what you want, which is that's the uniqueness. An agent is really like an extension of one person because they are tweaked towards what that person thinks the right sort of like SOP is for whatever action. And the fact that you can like you hire an employee, like first you be like, hey, try fixing a bug, and it's like, hey, oh, actually you did this mistake or that mistake, or you didn't understand that actually this is how the product works, so like that doesn't make sense. They'll learn, and then you're like, okay, now save it to your memory, so that next time you fix a bug, you remember that, and the agent can do that, right? So that's a huge thing that like I use extensively. And OpenClaw has this whole system also has skills, where you can have a human say something, the agent does it, and at the end they save a skill so that the next time the human wants it's learned, right? I think that's extremely powerful. I mean, it's literally every 2 months there's a new thing that like changes the game. I think the last piece is like browser use is like a very, very big one that Anthropic dropped in December, mid-December. I mean, it was in beta before. It was a Chrome extension. It was like, you don't really want to use it as a Chrome extension so much. I mean, at least me. But the fact that you could just talk to Cloud Code and then it opens Chrome and then it can do anything was like insane, because like you could literally like any workflow that before would mean that like you have to set up an MCP and configure it and trust it and this and that. Now it's like, open Gmail, look at my emails, tell me what's important, right? Now it becomes so much easier, right? Because you can, the same thing, it mimics how you would tell a human, just open Gmail and like, look at, this is all my emails, this is the way I work, I use a star system for important emails. Yeah.
Yep.
So I would say those are all the things that like make things efficient now.
You said many things that I would like to unpack. The first one, it's this idea of one shot versus multiple shots. So before, to add a feature, you need to like iterate quite a lot. Now you can just say the feature and it just gets built. However, many times what happens is that when I want something, like the blessing and curse of the AI agents is that they say what I do. And then most of the time, I happen to be wrong, because I say like, hey, I want this, like just store this thing and show it to the user later, but maybe it's an incomplete feature, or maybe it's something that actually breaks some other feature that I did there. So now that you are one-shotting most of the stuff, how can you keep the thing coherent? Like, do you have any kind of harness or any kind of technique that helps you? Like, well, yeah, we're adding a lot of stuff. Does it make sense together? Does it break something? Do we have any invariant that we assume that was always true, but with this new feature breaks, and then it actually triggers changes somewhere else? How can you manage this complexity?
So, I mean, I can tell you like sort of my recipe of the moment of like
Yeah.
the way I work. I think that like, so first of all, I've been a product person for a long time. I was an engineer, but also a product person, and I think that product changed a lot because now, so I have two different ways to work, and depends what I'm doing, right? If I'm building product, so like let's say I'm like, okay, I want to add. So I recently added ads. So now in one click, you can click a button that says run ads. You pick your budget, and it starts running ads. Essentially, it launches a meta ads agent that has access to Sora 2 and then to a subtitle API, and then creates content that's specific to the business, creates the UGC ads, uploads it to like a meta ads account, sets the budget, starts it, and then every day looks at performance and creates new ads. Like, so that's a pretty complex feature, but like I was like, how do I make it so simple for the user? Well, it's literally to run ads, pick budget, and you're done, right? And then you see the performance. So for a product like that, it's like a lot of thinking and iterating. And so initially I was like, no, maybe users want to click a button to create the AI video, and maybe there's a media section and then like an ad section. And so this iterative process, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's like literally taste and product. I don't know. By the way, so essentially, I use Opus for that, because Opus is like a very pragmatic, very good at design, very good. It's not the best coder, even though it's a really good coder. It's better coder than most people and me included. But there's better coding models like Codex, which is like the nerd that like will literally like code like every single test and make sure that everything works perfectly, but takes a little longer and sometimes overbuilt and over engineers. But Opus is great because it's like really very sort of like it feels like it's a founder and it cares about pragmatism and just getting it done. And so I would usually use Opus Claude for most features, especially when I'm building.
Mhm.
So that's like one workflow. Another big workflow is like there's actually like a bug somewhere. So like, the agents report that users, I don't know, like when, some reason they get this error and it touches billing. So I'm like, okay, so they implement a solution and then I'm again jamming with Opus. I'm like, okay, so what's the issue here? Okay, so wait, but like sometimes it doesn't have all the context. I'm like, okay, but like, have you thought about that? So I jam with Opus, and so we talk, and then they implement a solution. I'm like, are you sure? Is it safe? So if right now it's like there's probably better ways to like make sure you push
Yeah.
production, like unit tests, integration tests. But like in the meantime, you just say it's safe. Like, what's the worst case that could happen? And we ship this to production. So that's what I would used to do. And it works pretty well because it will understand and like really double check and then really have a sense of it. But then what I do is like I copy paste the whole conversation and open codecs on like 5.3 extra high, right? And I
Mhm.
say, hey, thoughts? What do you think? Like, do you think like what do you think? And it will nerd out and like really go through every single detail and say, this is what's good and this is what I would add and this is what they missed. Then I take the conclusion, give it to Opus, and I'm like, hey, Codex looked at this. What do you think? And then Codex, and then usually Opus usually says mostly right, but on this and this, that's true. It spotted real bugs, but the rest is over engineered. So that's interesting. Like, so it's like Opus is like, dude, don't over engineer. It's fine. You don't have like a million users. You have like, because it knows how many users I have. So it's like, it's fine. Like you just don't start like adding all this stuff that may break something else. So, and then go back and forth between the two until it's right, especially when it touches important stuff. And I'm like, I want to push the production fast, but I don't read the code anymore. So I'm like, I just need to get a feel.
Yeah.
So I would say those are my two main workflows, Opus for features. And then when it comes to bugs and like sort of like fixes that like touch, I usually do Opus, then Codex, and then have them sort of like debate for a little bit until I feel good.
This is mostly the workflow. Like I talk with a lot of people that are building agents or working with agents, and the people who are not building usually say like, "Oh no, but you need to review all the code. What if it's wrong? Blah blah blah." I have seen that most of the people who had organizations before, they actually have worked at a much higher level. So if you're the CFO of a company, a big company, let's say BP for oil industry, you don't know everything. Like you work at really, really high level and you're like, well, what if the data is not right? And you're like, well, we put checks down there to make sure that whatever surface is correct, but I am working at a higher level. And with everyone who is shipping really, not only fast, but actually like useful stuff on AI, I have seen this transition. Even the engineers that are becoming like highly, highly productive with it, they are doing this transition really, really quickly of, yeah, I don't need to see all the output. I need to think in systems and make sure that the system is correct. And if there is a bug, so be it. Like the CTO of Spotify before was able to operate saying like, I understand how a Spotify works. But if I tell him like, okay, can you tell me every line of code? It's like, no. And if something breaks, you just go to engineers. It's like, this doesn't look good. Please fix it. And you don't even like the CTO doesn't have to go there to read the code. He just knows the sense and says like, hey, this is not working as expected. So that's what I have seen the most. And then a small thing that I use personally that a friend of mine pointed out, and I always share it with others, is this idea of these machines are encoding a lot of opinions. So when you ask them like, hey, what could you do? They usually come up with really good stuff, but it's incredible how far or how much role playing improves those results. So when you are doing this switching between Codex and Opus, if you give them a role, like, hey, what could a product person with a lot of experience with 0 to 1 applications do? Versus what could a staff engineer from a big company do, it really changes and they are able to play both characters. But when you say you, it's really hard to know who is going to come back. So it's just like a small tip that can improve like your workflow or maybe like have better results on how to deal with this stuff. something that people may be questioning right now is, well, what are the features of the product right now? Because you talk about coding and putting ads, and they are like, okay, so just like have an NCP there. One of the best interactions with the product that I had was actually emailing you. Because it replied back on your behalf and like, hey, this may be interesting. Ben is busy right now. He's building a multi-billion-dollar company as a solo founder. But I will surface this to him. Talk to you later. So what are the features that your product has today?
So, what you're talking about is a feature I launched on Monday or Tuesday, yesterday, which is essentially, I can talk about the features that Pulsia have, but like what you experience is like talking, AI is my co-founder and Pulsia is my co-founder, and talking to Pulsia, jamming on like what's the best strategy to grow faster and to things we should raise more money, right? And I think I already have enough money in the bank because I raised the pre-seed and I'm literally burning nothing because it's just me. And I have credits from the big labs that gave me credits to build on their platforms, like the GCPs of the world. I don't need money, but like obviously, I think Pulsia is such a powerful platform, and I can see the retention, and I can see users loving it, and I see so many people are so curious about it, and like maybe we should get more compute to go faster, right? Get more intelligence into this product through the self-healing, to like, and so what I decided to do is that, but also I need to build, right? I need to, what's most important right now is me making Pulsia autonomous so that it can start building faster features, faster bugs, but I need to trust it, right? And so I decided to start this 2-week window where Pulsia is going to raise money on the behalf of the company, right? So it's raising its own round of capital. And to do that, I essentially gave it access to my inbox. So whenever you email ben@pulsia.com, it will reply automatically. But what I did is that, Pulsia is connected to obviously the production database and the production code. And so it has all the context about everything, right? Context about our, the product, the features, the vision, the live data, the retention, like all the pipeline, because all of those documents are in MD files in the code base, right? And so it can essentially answer any question that anyone could have. And for example, an investor was interested, like usually an investor would talk to me first, right? But I essentially give them Pulsia, who has all the context and more about what we want to build, the vision, the roadmap, the metrics today, everything. And also the live dashboard that I launched, which you can go to, which shows the exact metrics, the metrics right now, how many companies, how many tasks, how many messages, and you can ask it questions also on the chat, all the latest 5 companies, the latest 5 tasks, what's in progress, right? And so you can see the system working live. And so that's what that's why it was, but it's like, even if you're not an investor, it also replies automatically. And it's actually, so that's why, that's sort of like what happened when you emailed me. What's really interesting is that I've been willing to automate support, right? So for example, like when customers have an issue, they actually talk to Pulsia in the app. But when Pulsia is like, dude, I can't build that feature right now, or you're asking me for free credits, but like I can't give you credits right now, email support@pulsia.com. And then, but when it lands to support@pulsia.com, I'm like, right now it's me responding, but I could have another agent respond that has more context, can do more things, can actually give credits, but it's a second layer of sort of like an escalation, right? But I haven't done it because I'm like, I need to configure it so it's perfect. And what's interesting is that now that I configure it for ben@pulsia.com, it auto responds to people, but I'm like, it's actually a good experience because it tells the user I'm busy, which is always true because I'm always busy making the platform better. And I see the emails. So if it's important, I reply. Like I reply to you. You got 2 emails, one from Pulsia, one from me, saying, yeah, of course, like let's talk tomorrow, right? So I was like, this is actually kind of nice. And of course I wanted to tweak it because, for example, there was this higher up at Stripe who was like, oh, Pulsia is amazing. I want to partner together. And I'm like, yeah, I use Stripe. So like 100% I'll do the call. But I wasn't responding. And so they were planning, Pulsia was starting to be like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, Ben's available tomorrow at like, and here's his calendar invite. Here's the calendar invite. And it was just making up stuff. And I was like, Okay, I need to tweak your prompt a little bit so that you don't make up stuff. But it's just really interesting how, and this is sort of like my philosophy here is that like try the extreme of what you think AI cannot do. Try that because maybe it can do it pretty well, and then you can decide the limit, right? Or it can be an assist, right? It could do most of the work and then you finish it. But it's quite surprising. And then once you get used to it, you get comfortable with it. You're like, whatever, like, I'm an AI founder working on an AI first platform. I have an AI responding to my emails. Like, if it shocks you, then like maybe you're not the right partner, right? So that's what you experience with the email. And by the way, like so I told you about the AI engineering team that like fixes bugs and creates new features autonomously. Now you experienced my sort of like support email agent that I'm probably gonna extend to support at Polsia.com, but it will be a different sort of like role, right? And prompt and because it and give more tools. I also, whenever I do marketing, like use some routines, like some skills for marketing, but like I would want to fully automate it and give it more scope. And I think that like with those three, you pretty much have built full automation because it's like if you have product and engineering solved, support solved, and marketing not solved, but like autonomously running, and then you can decide in your direction if things should be tweaked. For example, marketing, it's like could be anything. You could do like Google Ads, or you could like tweet every day, or like tweet 10 times a day, or you could tweet in French or in English. Like that's taste, or that's like a perspective, right? But beyond that, you can automate whatever your taste is your taste. It's like that's your perspective on the world. But if you can automate that, then like it's sort of like if you had hired like a full team that would cost you like hundreds of $1,000s a year, and suddenly it's $50 a month. And I actually have a hot take. Like I think that like in 2026, companies that are not 80% autonomous will die. Like they will, especially new companies without revenue that are not 80% autonomous will for sure die. Why? Because if it's a good idea, there will be 10 copycats, and the teams that make their company 80% autonomous will blitzgate at no cost, right? So you have like bootstrapped people just blitzgating, creating all the features, listening to users, building with user feedback, accelerating, and using the profits to pull back into more reach and more marketing, versus any team that needs to go raise capital to like start and then has to hire an engineer. Then the engineer doesn't want to work on weekends, and also they don't agree with the direction. So there's debates in the company, and then all that time is where the team that's 80% autonomous will just build. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with Pulsia, right? Pulsia is essentially giving anyone this 80% autonomous team. Technically, it can be 100%, but like people that sign up to Pulsia today, at least they like have an idea in mind. So like they guide it with the 20%, but 80% is what Pulsia does most of the things. And over time, I will give it more and more capabilities. Not I will, like Pulsia will give itself more capabilities to cover more use cases better. It actually learns cross company. So like if an agent, for example, that's cold outreach, it will have a memory file for that specific company. For example, let's say for you, it's like you're like, oh, for your specific podcast, like the cold outreach agent, like, never reach out to like very big, very famous people because it doesn't never work. And I don't like to this, but like I want you to target like more like solo founders that are like, at the early innings, because that's and that work on agents, right? So don't send emails to Sam Altman, right? For example. So it will learn for your company, but then also, as it does cold outreach for your company, it will learn that like, oh, interesting. When I put emoji in the subject line, I got an answer. And when I didn't get an answer. And so it will save that learning anonymously into a shared memory file that can be read by the same agent the next time it runs for another company. So it will not be like, there will no proprietary data about your company, but it will learn that emojis work well in subject lines. And so over time, you have this shared intelligence that makes the product better and better. And that's extremely powerful because that means that like you build your business on Pulsia, your teams always remember the best practices. They share best practices together. So you sort of you have your product get better and better as there's more companies on the platform. So all those ideas, by the way, it's like everyone's toying with this stuff, but it's like, you start to mimic how teams work, how humans work. This is how it works, right?
We already had before AGI, general intelligence, that it's humans, or the most generic that we know, it's humans.
Yeah.
So it was crazy for me to see that many people like estimate that, and they say like, "Oh, agents are going to change everything because for first time we have intelligent technology." And you're like, "Well, when I walk on the street, there is quite a lot of intelligent biologic technology, and I see them cooperating and say them coordinating. So there is a lot to learn from there. And I think that there is going to be quite a lot of things that we can extract and apply to agents. Something that from your hot take that I think that it applies a lot if you are a VC or something like that, or even an entrepreneur. It's this idea of, well, for the last 15 years we had more or less a formula, or let's say for the last 17 years since YC started like packaging the stuff on how to be successful for companies. And there is a lot of things that you were able to use the knowledge as a good entrepreneur and then take advantage versus other teams. So if you are doing a consumer company or a consumer app, you knew like, okay, I need to use ads. Then anyone who was not using ads was just like destroyed by you, because you're like, well, I have done this so much time that like that team has a good idea, but unfortunately they don't know how to apply it to the consumer market, or the opposite, to B2B. And then anyone who had been before doing B2B was able to take advantage of that. Same happened with the specific technology. So cloud computing. Nobody starts saying like, I need to raise money for a rack of computers. Like if you do that, you are dead. So before, these things already applied. So if you don't follow the new technology that it's 10 times better, you are like kind of washed up. But it was per department. So, like most of the time was like, well, marketing, okay, that team doesn't know that, but the engineering is strong enough to cover up for it. Now with AI, it's going to be, as you said, like if you don't automate 80% of the stuff, and actually it's not only automating it as you would do, it could be better than any entrepreneur by themselves could do, because you're going to say like, well, I am doing a consumer app, it's the first time, but marketing is covered by AI agents, and they are doing a really good job compared with the baseline of a group of people that just gather to do it. So I am really interested to see. I don't know if it's going to be by the end of this year, but I am pretty sure that by the end of next year, so before the end of 2027, we're going to have like $1 billion company by one person, that it's not just like a one pony trick of, like it was growing really, really fast, Facebook bought me or something like that, but actually a company with real cash flow. And the moment they showed us, or they show us how they structure the stuff, is going to be so different to our way of working that we're going to be like mind blown. We're going to say, okay, like we need to copy this system quite a lot. And actually, I think that it may be one of the companies that it's building on your platform.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, it's crazy because, sometimes I talk to very smart people, but that don't work in tech, that maybe work in banking or work on whatever, right? And they still, they don't know because they're not exposed to all this stuff. I think OpenClaw was the first mainstream, but I don't even know if it's mainstream actually, because maybe I'm too pilled into the tech Twitter that like I think it's mainstream, but maybe it's not at all. Maybe OpenAI will make it mainstream. But essentially, most people, they think AI is ChatGPT. Why? Because ChatGPT is used by a billion people, and like it's almost like a synonym, right, of AI at this point. But and ChatGPT, because they're trying to give intelligence to everyone, which is a great mission, they and they want to give it for free or like close to free. They sort of have to make sure that like most requests are not too expensive, right? And so that's why they did the router, which is a very smart thing, which is like, hey, for most questions, like if the model thinks it can answer without looking at the internet, just respond right away, right? But I essentially got a lot of very smart people telling me like, yeah, I don't know, AI, like, sometimes they make mistakes, right? So first of all, maybe because they tried it 3 months ago or whatever, right? But that's, in my mind, it's because they're using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT by default, it's always trying to point you to get your request to be the cheapest possible. And I'm not, I have no insider information. Maybe that's not the case, and maybe that's actually no, like whatever. They probably know better than me. But that's sort of like what my hunch is, versus when you use Claude Code. Claude Code by default is Opus 4.6 thinking, ultra thinking with and then you usually takes a max account of like $200 a month, like because it's a professional tool. So then it's the opposite. By default, the product is max intelligence, right? So you have ChatGPT. By default, it's like the cheapest cost because we don't want people to use thinking and pro because it's way too expensive, and we want intelligence, affordable intelligence for everyone. And Claude Code, which probably has like 10 million users worldwide, I mean, at this point, it's blowing up, but like, I'm saying, it's still very small versus billion. So the conclusion of all this is that most people, they don't know, right?
Yeah.
They don't know how powerful the system is. OpenClaw is sort of like opened their mind because it's like, it was such an easy way to interact with Claude Code, right? Just via Telegram or whatever, right? And there will be systems like Pulsia. Pulsia, you just talk to it via email, and it just has all this stuff. It sends you emails every day about, hey, here's what I've done, and it's very playful, and there's right. But I think that this year is going to be about democratize, like products that democratize the power of AI that like most tech people have seen for the past 6 months, right? But most people have no clue. So that's sort of like what's a little scary, is that most people have no clue, which means that like there's an unfair advantage to people who do. And that's why like I'm trying to build a product that like right now I'm charging $50 a month for the subscription.
Mhm.
It's like literally I'm breaking even on that, because I'm like thinking I want the most people as possible to experience this product, and then I make 20% on every transaction on the platform, right? So if you make money on the platform, I take 20%, which is sounds like an app store fee, whatever. It's expensive, but like at the same time, I'll make it as cheap as possible for you to get in and give it a shot, right? Which I think is fair. Building a whole business for $50 a month is actually pretty cheap, right? But essentially, like tools that try to democratize this insane intelligence and this insane agentic tools, I think I'm hopeful that like it will even the playing field a little bit and make sure that like creative people get the right tools to build, to impact the world. And it's not just going to be like, a huge hedge fund that like just uses like swarms of Claude Code and OpenClaw, whatever, and just like takes over the world.
It's going to be really crazy because even right now, what we believe that it's mainstream, it's not. So, like in tech, for example, everyone would say, like, do you know Figma? Of course. Do you know Atlassian? Atlassian? Of course.
Right.
You go on the street, you ask someone, and they say, like, I don't know what any of that is. Like, they know Apple. But in our mind, more or less, all this is the same level because who doesn't know Figma? Like, everyone uses Figma. Not really. And then also, if you move about countries, like it's even less. That's something that also happened a lot in the Bay Area. Like 1 year ago, everyone was saying, like, you don't understand how much better Sonnet is than ChatGPT 4.5 or something like that, or 4 dot something. Everyone is using it because of that. And you're like, no, nobody is using it. Like most of the people don't even know that there are different models of ChatGPT. They call it chat, and that's AI for them. So now with Globot was the same. Like everyone is like, hey, everyone knows this. You walk into a hospital, and it's not only the nurses and the doctors that they don't know about OpenClaw. Like you ask the people who are in the hospital, and they would also say, like, I came here yesterday, so if this is from last week, I should know. I've never heard that name, but when we were in that little bubble, something that is interesting because it was aligned with the next question was about pricing and cost. So you said that, well, capital is always good to grow if you have product market fit or if you have like an enough pull from the market, but that the cost of running this was not that expensive. What are the costs and where do they come from? Like if someone is working on agents, like are we talking about hundreds or thousands of dollars per month versus how are they distributed? It's mostly in coding or it's in customer service. You have like first-hand information of this. Like, do you mind sharing it?
So you're talking about my cost, like the company cost, or like the unit economic of the product, or both?
Actually both, because it's really interesting for people who are building today because they like you are really at the edge of this.
So let's talk about the at the company level. At the company level, it's really, it gets weird. Meaning, I've actually raised some capital pre-seed like 6 months ago. I pay myself a salary. Right now I'm in SF, so a few expenses here and there. But like the burn is so low, right? Because I'm just one person. And in terms of like AI tools, I use mostly Claude and Codex. So I pay $200 a month for Codex, Max, whatever it is, and
Mhm.
$200 a month. Actually, I have three. Maybe they're gonna ban me for that. Please, Anthropic, don't ban me. I have 3 Anthropic Max subscriptions because I use so much of it, and I have agents running in the background doing tasks that, like, midweek they're like, "Oh, you finished your weekly quota," and so then I sign out and sign back in. So I have 3 of those. But that's $600 a month. Isn't that crazy? So I essentially, let's say 3 Claude Max subscriptions plus 1 Codex. That's pretty much everything I use. That's $800 a month plus my salary plus, I work from home mostly. Here I'm like working at like a friend's house, hacker house. So like I have 0 cost, right? And so that's the cost structure of how, which is unprecedented, that like I can build so much and be able to be actively building the product, actively building the infrastructure. Like right now, it's like I'm getting so much usage right now because of like the tweet and like the buzz. I mean, the mini buzz around the announcement yesterday. The infrastructure is good. The marketing, of course, I have time to do marketing and like do all this stuff. I have time to do support, and so that's what. So for me, the cost structure is like still, it's not 0, but it's like extremely low, right? Compared to friends that have companies where it's like they have 10 people, 20 people, and you have to pay the salaries, you have to pay the office, the offsite, the right. So, and I think there's the up and close guy, right? Also, it's just one guy, and I mean, as I don't even know. Like, actually, he was losing money. Same thing. It was like, I mean, whatever it is, right? But same situation, right? Just one guy being able to build a system that, like, so that's the cost structure of my company. Now, the way I think about business models in the age of AI is I don't really want to be a token reseller, right? So if you think about, again, no offense to all these other companies, but like the Cursor and the Lovables of the world, it's like you sort of subscription for $25 and actually it costs you like $12 of credits, and then like you sell credits and then you have some margin on the credits. But really the Entropics of the world makes the most of the money, and then like, that's sort of, I mean, again, I'm not an insider. Maybe I'm sure they're way smarter than this, and like there's different business model, but like let's assume, right? Well, actually, like Cursor built their own model. That's really smart, right? So like
Yeah.
they now route it to their own model where they do all the margins. So that's actually a really smart model. But what I think about it, where I think about it, I'm like, you know what? Like, I want to make it, I don't want to really make money, a lot of money, the whole money on like, on the subscription, on the access to the platform, which is essentially mostly compute, right? Where I want to make money is like on the economic output. So like when you like essentially think about Pulsia as like you hire a team, you hire an agency, a full stack agency, whatever, right? And you're like, here's my idea, like just build it, like just build the website, do marketing, answer to support, like whatever, and like whatever other tools that you're gonna come out, like just use them all and like just do it and like make it happen. Like my idea is amazing. I believe in it, right? I know my niche, I know my community, I know they need stuff like that. Like, I'm a personal trainer and I know that my other personal trainer friends, they have this pain point, and like I know exactly I can vocalize the pain point and I can vocalize the product. I just don't know how to build it. So Pulsia is your team, and it's like, you know what? Your team is like, it's almost like an agency said, you know what? It's gonna be at cost, right? But like I'm taking 20% equity, right? Which, by the way, some agencies do that, right? Some design agencies, they do. I mean, it's not like that, but like it's gonna be 100K instead of 200K, but like I take a point, right, of equity. So Polsia is a similar model. It's like I'm trying to make the subscription affordable. I cannot lose money on it, right? Because like I'm not gonna scale a business on losses like that. But for the companies that make money, which they do to because it's Polsia provides a Stripe account, so the money arrives on the Stripe account. I take 20%, and they keep 80. So like it's like a free agency, almost free agency, and then and so I think that's the right way to look at it, because essentially you align with the customer success, and also you take a cut of the economic output. You take a cut of like the value, because the value you provide with that team is the value is like building a real business. So I'm taking a percentage of like the final value, right? And I think that's how businesses in the world of AI are kind of converge. For example, if you build like, someone builds like an agency, an AI agency that like offers a service, design services, right? And actually in the back end, it's like AI agents that like look at your brand and like use like whatever, like
Mhm.
Nano Banana to create a bunch of design assets and sends it to you, they're not going to charge you for the compute, right? They're going to charge you for like how much would it cost for you to go to a real design agency and maybe charge like 20% of that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like charge way less, but like not, they won't charge for tokens. They'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, it cost me $20 of tokens, so it's $30, right? Or $40. And I think that's the right way to see it. I mean, we'll see how it evolves, but that's
And
my
many times it will be packaged even one level up. So there's going to be like the commodity thing that only the big labs provide, like Nano Banana. Like I generate images, but
yeah.
people are not going to directly use Nano Banana. That they're going to
Mm-hmm.
use to some service that says like, hey, you don't want to generate images. We're doing
Yeah.
advertisement here. Yeah,
Yeah.
you need images, but this is not what you are charged. Like you
Exactly.
are not telling me generate an image, and this is actually how it works with people, and how most of the economy started like leveling up. Like if you see when we move from agriculture to the kind of services that we have today, you can see that more and more things are prepackaged, and
Totally.
that's why many people usually fail to predict how things are going to evolve because they say like, well, we're going to run out of jobs or something like that because they already can package the food.
Mm-hmm.
So without people, why do we need people for then? And you're like, don't worry, like we can always work at higher levels. Something that I would wonder then is that you mentioned at some point you needed something like cloud code. And I know people who were working, like they rightly identified this. And then they say like, okay, let's build this tool that, like for developers it takes these tokens and it's tailored to coding. However, they were not successful at marketing it. Like people see it and it's like, well, I don't care much. But then when Claude appears, so someone with a lot of names say like, hey, this product now exists. Out of the blue, people start using it. They get mad because they say, hey, that was my idea. It's just that I was early or something like that. Do you worry that this could happen to your product? Like big labs start saying like, hey, wait a second. So yeah, like this is kind of working, but still most of the people don't know about it. We're going to add it like one of our offerings. Or do you think that there is some competitive advantage, even like specializing on this as a smaller player that then can become really, really big? By the way, this is something that Cursor did. And many people would say like, well, big models are going to capture that. Cursor is doing really, really well. So do you think that the same applies here?
I think that like AI is gonna take over the whole economy, right? So like the whole economy. So the question becomes, will the whole economy be swallowed by the labs? Which, by the way, it's possible. Between like the Chinese labs and the US labs and the European labs, it's possible that they want, if they're aggressive enough, it all depends on like how aggressive they are. And by the way, if you go back 10 years, you could assume that Google could swallow up also all the economy, right? Because, and by the way, they sort of have been doing that little by little. They swallowed search and they swallowed media with YouTube, and then now they're swallowing transportation with Waymo, and then they're doing it. And then, Elon is doing it the same way. Like he's swallowing internet communication now, and like he has cars, and then he's also doing transportation. And so it's already happening. The question is, there's always has been in those 10 years where like all these massive, brilliant entrepreneurs have like taken more and more of the economy, right, through like their ventures. There's always space for entrepreneurs to take a slice, right? I think my point of view is building like this very opinionated ecosystem where like, the way OpenClaw, you can ask it anything. Pulsia is very opinionated. It's like, it's a certain way to build a business. Like if you click on run ads, there's no Google ads right now. It's like meta ads. It may change, but like, because people may add features, I may add it, but like, it's a simplified world. It's a simplified company building, right? The same way you have Squarespace, which is like a bunch of these templates. And then you have like maybe WordPress, which is like more open-ended, or, I think you always have space for different types of people with different types of, Cloud Code is $1 billion ARR business, and it can technically do what Polsia can. But then Polsia doesn't target people who can use Cloud Code. But then ChatGPT is like very mainstream, but maybe if they added Polsia and ChatGPT, it would become really confusing. right? Because it'd be like, I don't get it. Like, I'm here to like ask for advice on my relationship, and you're
Yeah.
asking me to build a business, and then you're asking me to like create a fund of businesses and to, asking, and you send me an email every day on like my business. It's like, I don't, so maybe they will, and maybe they will stay in their lane, or maybe they will do like, I have a friend yesterday who told me about Minimax in China, where like they're literally rebuilding all the businesses, and their goal is like to build every single vertical of business so they can train the LLM on every single business lines. I mean, yeah, I mean, makes sense. It's like empire building. Like every, it's like the end state of capitalism, right?
Yeah. The good thing is that this like replace always, like it happened before. Like IBM, for example, owned computing. And
Yeah,
they would say like, well, of course they have everything. They have like the best database. They have the best chips buildings. They have the
yeah.
best, and then one by one goes away. So even if ChatGPT tries this or OpenAI, it will always happen that other people are able to find the cracks on the new things. And also something that as an entrepreneur myself, sometimes it's hard because in Twitter they're constantly saying like, hey, you're going to fail, because like the AI can do it.
Yeah.
But you also need to remember Google has been extremely successful with ads. And then you say like, okay, so they own the market. And then you check, okay, so today versus 2017, 2007, do we have more ad tech billion-dollar companies or less? And you're like, well, actually, we have much more. So how is it possible? I thought that they succeeded, like they swallowed everything. So I think that the same is going to happen with all these businesses. So it's
Mhm,
funny for me to see in Twitter how people say like, hey, you should not even try. AI is going to do that. And then I
mhm.
remember, okay, like if I am one of the ad tech companies that is like valued in tens, like Facebook, okay, I will take it. I thought that Google won, but yeah, I will take Facebook. Don't worry. This thing of Twitter, it's actually really aligned with the last couple of questions that I usually have for closing the episode. That is in positive and negative. Like, what would you like to see more, and what would you like to see less? Which one do you want to start with?
I mean, I would start with the more.
Okay.
But I mean, it aligns with Polsia's vision, but like I would like to see more entrepreneurship, right? So I think that like the tools like Pulsia, but also like all the other tools that are going to come out this year, and all the improvements with Cloud Code and Open Cloud and all this stuff, it enables people's creativity to come into form in a much more easier way. And again, with the 20-20-80 rule, where like 20% is creativity and taste, and 80% is the ground that AI can do. And so I want to see a lot more entrepreneurship. And I think that there's a lot of people in the world that like, have a lot of side hustles and like are freelancers and stuff like that, are influencers. And now they can have a lot more businesses and a lot more business lines and try to like put their creativity for their communities into play. And then I really see a world where like we'll have a Cambrian explosion of like of ideas of services that are like going to be ultra tailored, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I think that that's good for the world too. So
In terms of like what I want to see less of, I mean, ideally less people less on their phones, but I mean, I'm a victim too, so I think if someone figures out a cure to this, that'd be great.
yes. I am reading the book Deep Work right now, and I am actually in the one of the chapters is quit social media,
Mhm,
and I have been doing it for quite a while now, like let's say like 6 weeks, something like that. And
mhm,
your brain works so much better when you don't have a constant input of things that may
mhm,
seem somehow relevant, but then when you look in retrospective, just like okay, so in 2021 I was really connected. What came out of it?
mhm,
And then like it's always like vague stuff like no, because if not you're going to miss the stuff, but when you see it after many years it's like yeah, it didn't matter. So let's see if we move there. Unfortunately, I think that we are going to a world where people are more connected than ever. I hope like maybe with AI we have more free time or something, and people start taking care of their health, and especially like mental health with this.
mhm. 100%.
Perfect, Ben. So thank you very much for coming. I had
Cool.
a lot of fun and looking forward to follow your progress.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jordi.
Have a really good one. Bye.